made effort, but close enough, right? So the title is almost good. Right, so we will talk about observability. Hot topic today, but not about the buzzword, which observability very often is. And I will show you the observability for serverless, which is another buzzword, right? So 2 buzzwords in one talk. That's great. Okay, so first, let's think, how good is your monitoring? Are you happy with that? Well, I'm not surprised. Okay, so my name is Paweł Piwosz. I am DevOps Institute Ambassador, AWS Community Builder. That's why we will talk about AWS Lambda today. And CD Foundation Ambassador, and I've been working for EPAM for 4 years right now. And as you can see here, I have a lot of free time in my life. So what is the problem, right? The problem is that we have less and less visibility. If we have the, I shouldn't say that because I'm old enough, but older type of monitoring, as we did 20, 30 years ago, we will see less and less. Why? Because of this. When we had bare metal, we could see everything. And I mean it, everything, right? So we were able to see everything, even from the power transfer to the application behavior, right? Then we came to great idea to come with virtual machines. And as long as you have the platform in your, let's say, house, right, you are able to monitor it. But if you go to OVH, whatever else, you just lose it, right? Because you see only virtual machine. You don't see anything what is behind. Example, on AWS, what you see for your EC2 instance. This is simple virtual machine, right? Do you see how the host behaves? Well, if you are smart enough, you know how to check, partially what host can do using some tools on your virtual machines, but not necessarily everything. Then things were even worse with containers, right? We have one container. How do you know how this container performs in scope of your whole infrastructure, right? And then drama came to the picture, and we have serverless, where you just ship the code and you see generally nothing, right? And why is that? Because something is not wrong, okay. Because we have less interaction with our platform, because we have less accessibility to the platform, we have much more tools than we had. And who is the best DevOps? The one who is using one tool for everything, or the one who is using 10,000 tools, right? So look on your pipelines. We have the idea that central logging is passé, right? We don't want to do that anymore. And generally, the most big problem is that we have decoupling. With monolith, everything was simple. And I mean simple. Right now, when we have microservices, there we need to monitor the microservices themselves and also the connectivity and everything what is between, like queues, network, access, etc., 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 etc. Right? This leads me to this this picture here about the less visibility. Who is familiar with that? Good. So generally, green means you manage, red means someone else manage it for you. By someone else manage it for you, I mean that you have no idea what's going on there, right? And on-premise, you monitor everything. Here, you just ship the code. And you pray that your vendor is doing the right thing, right? So, first thing what we need to have in mind, and this is also about the trust from the first speech today, is about the cultural shift, right? We need to approach to the way how we monitor things a little bit differently. And because we can't today catch logs in the way like we did before, we need to find something new, right? So here we have approach which is called like a structure logs, right? Who is familiar with structure logs? 2, 3, right, 4. So what structure log is? This is the definition from Samologic, right? Structure logging is the practice of implementing a consistent, blah, blah, blah. You can read it. But in fact, this describes something what I called structured message, not the log itself, right? And structured message is not the structure log, really. Couple of times during this conference, OpenTelemetry was mentioned. OpenTelemetry defines what you should have in structure log, right? This is like the high level, like a nirvana of structuring logs, but we are not there yet. So what we can do, example, standard log from the system, right? So we are more or less familiar with that kind of log line, right? Is this structured? No way. Do we know what's going on? Oh, yeah, we have an error. Where, why, what happened? No one knows, right? So what we can do with that, we can start to have approach to structurize it. So and then that's the tricky part, how to become the senior. You just take the line and put into the JSON, and you are a senior, right? And you have kind of structured log. So, but this is the beginning. This is the beginning, because with this, you can go with more deep approach with what information would be in this line, right? So you can put more and more information. And also, by having this in the JSON or any structurized way, you make this thing easier to be consumed by the tool, right? You need to have less energy, less power. It will be faster. It will be more precise, right? So this is a good start, but this is not the structure log yet. To have the structure log, we have to have there also the information about the surroundings of our situation, right? So it's not only about the error itself or anything, but also what happening around, why this error could happen, right? And here, with the help, comes observability. But now, the point. If you have Grafana on Kubernetes, it doesn't mean that you have observability. It means that you have Grafana on Kubernetes. Just it and only it, okay? So what are the 3 elements, and spoiler, 3 elements of observability? Who can tell me? Exactly. So we have 3. I don't know why this presentation works this way, but we have logs, traces, and metrics, right? With logs, well, it's quite simple. We collected logs that way or another for a long time, right? With metrics, that's a little bit more complicated. With traces, well, this is quite of new for many of us, right? So let's take a look into the logs. So we write everything to logs, right? But with small but. We write only errors, right? Because we need to save money. What it means? I tell you what it means. Your logs are useless, right? Because log need to be completed, right? Because without complete log with all actions you've got in the system, you will not have a very important element, which we see in a second. So about logs, they need to be structurized. Surprise. Consistent, also surprise, and not only from one system, but whole application, right? They need to contain full information and need to be constructed for automated systems. Because on the end of the day, what we want is automation who will act on it, not we. Okay? We want to sleep in the night. And of course, they need to be collected consistently as well as they need to be consistent. Right. So what about metrics? The most common metrics we know they are for performance, right? Or for the error rate, things like that. But honestly speaking, if you will be asked by the business about the performance metrics, generally you will say that they are great because you have no idea how bad they are, right? Because in, let's call it, multi-microservices environment, and with new modern another buzzwords like Scrum, self-established teams, blah 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 blah, no one cares about someone else, right? And I know what my application is doing, but I have no idea what others are doing, and I have no idea why my application is going down, but I'm looking on the logs, everything is fine, right? So what's going on? So here we need to have again the full information. And what about we can say about metrics? They need to be structurized. Yeah, I copied this slide and just changed the name of the element, right? They need to be consistent. They need to cover context in the same way like logs. They need to cover full information, which you need, of course, from the business perspective. This is important, and constructed for automated systems and collected consistently and relevant for business, right? Because on the end of the day, you need to remember that proper monitoring system is one of the most expensive elements of your application, right? And who is paying for that? Business. So they need to see the reason why they need to pay for it, right? What about, yes, and we can collect it directly, and we can collect it from logs, right? So we can transform logs into the metrics. What about traces? And here the fun begins. Because if your business will ask you about collecting information about specific client who is like yelling on the business or sales that he should be able to get this information in 5 seconds and your system give this information in 5.1 seconds. How you will find it in 100 microservices? Good luck with that. But if you collect traces, you will have the information through the whole system, right? From the beginning to the end. And what about traces? Again, they need to be consistent because you need to search through all of them, right? In the same way. They need to be collected consistently, right? They need to allow you to track requests through the whole system. That's why there need to be an information. It could be called trace ID, whatever else, right? Which will go through microservice to microservice. And this is the identifier who will be used to track it, right? They can give you information about the performance. And this is maybe not that touchable, right? Because for performance, we have metrics. But generally, if you want to check specific request and many requests, you will look on how this request performed through the whole platform using traces, right? And this gives you the zooming option because you can just go back and look on your system as a whole, and when you need, you can go to the one microservice or to the one request, right? Why context is important? What is that? Who can tell me? Right? Having only this, you can just guess. You can have lucky guess, right? But if you know, you know. Right? So that's why, without context, you are missing something. And you can miss this badly, right? Because what means that your system logged 500 errors from your web server in 1 hour. Is this good or bad? Depends. But how you will know that without context? If this is this is like 2 errors in 10 millions of requests, that's could be better, but it's not that bad, right? But if you have 3 request through this time. So it means that 66% of your requests just go to hell. Right? So what is the context in the observability? Going through the logs, they can help you understand the surrounding. Traces can help you understand the path taken by the request. And metrics can help you understand the scale, right? So this leads me to the kind of very unpopular opinion that if you have something in logs, then do something, right? So if you will not know what this something is, you will have just big headache, right? You need to understand this. And honestly, before observability became the buzzword, I had some idea which I called meal. This is like an extension of observability, really, because this is what I proudly called intelligent monitoring, right? So we have logs, we have events, we have metrics, and also we have actions, right? So I call them a little bit differently, but generally it's my idea, right? So if you will hear about this someday, that it's me. So we have metrics, we have events and logs. These all collected can define some actions, and those actions can be taken automatically, right? So that's the beauty of it, right? So now we are going to the meat. We will talk, I will show you how to implement approach to observability in something what is called AWS Lambda, right? So this is the serverless approach to from the AWS who is working with the Lambdas or serverless at all. Okay, perfect. So do you know what is the biggest issue of the AWS Lambda? Generally, we can, I think, agree that this issue is called cold start, right? This is the situation where AWS need to prepare some stuff, some server, yes, because there is a server, which will do your stuff, right? And if the server is prepared, not used for 15 minutes, it will go down. So if you run your Lambdas in the interval of 16 minutes, every time you will hit cold start. If you run your Lambda in the interval of 14 minutes and your Lambda is 13 minutes long, you will hit the same warm Lambda already, right? But how we can capture this? Because if you work with this, you know. But business will not know, right? So we have a couple of possibilities. We can use Lambda Insights. Lambda Insights will show us how many invocations suffer with this. And also we can use X-ray, which will show you the impact on invocations, right? And how this cold start looks like very often is something like that. So imagine the application you have SLA that you will present the response in 200 milliseconds, right? And this part takes 150, and this 3 seconds. It may happen, right? So today, AWS has better and better approaches to this, so we shorten this time, but still it is significant, right? And if the Lambda is warm, it's just the execution, right? There are two types of cold starts. I will tell about them a little bit later. I used to the presentation something what is called as AWS SAM. I will not go deeper into that. This is the standard of the infrastructure as code. And the standard template looks like this. I don't want to go through this because this not make sense at this point. Just short information, I define the Lambda and create API for it in one template. So GitOps-ish approach, right? So GitOps is not only for Kubernetes, right? And this contains 20 lines. And we will work on it in order to make it better. But what we have, if you deploy this, so you have your Lambda function, I'm sorry, API gateway with all stages, all endpoints. In this case, very simple endpoint, just slash, and you have your Lambda function. Beautiful, right? So you happily execute it. And this is what you see after the execution. Very informative, right? Okay, let's see maybe with the lambdas. Okay, I know how many invocations I've done. I know what is the duration, but why this duration is here and this is here, I don't know, right? Luckily, I don't have errors. And I have like 6 more metrics. This is the standard picture you have from Lambda, right? So maybe in logs, right? Let's hope logs will be better. Yeah. Those 3 open records. This is everything what Lambda logged by default, the Python Lambda. Very informative. I know everything what happened. Finally, I know how long it took and for how much I will be billed. That's maybe for the finance department is important, but what next, right? So let's improve it. First of all, we will enable X-ray for Lambda function. So we go to the configuration of the Lambda, monitoring and operation tools, and we need to do edit. And now you become senior DevOps. Okay, so I told you that we can control the request through the whole chain, right? So on the beginning of the chain, we have API. We go to API, logs tracing, we enable tracing, and we become lead. Right? And these 2 ticks, literally these 2 ticks give me that. So I have information about the tracking, how the requests are going through the system, what is the performance, what is the error rate, where I see the, let's call bottlenecks, I have the response distribution, etc., etc., etc. Everything is here. I even see that generally I used the 2 ways of executing my Lambda directly or through API, right? So, of course, this is very simple. This may be very complicated, right? Depends how many resources you have in your system. Then you have very nice information that you've got responses, what kind of responses, what time of the response time, and except this one, because you see there is no get method. So this was executed directly to Lambda. All of them are between 16 milliseconds to 28 milliseconds. What? The same code in time of like 1 minute? That difference? What the hell is going on here, right? I don't know. So let's check the traces. Ah, there is something, right? There is something. This is the longest one, 28. How it looks for 16? There is something as well, but shorter. But what it is? I know, because I work with Lambda for almost 10 years right now, right? But if you look at this for the first time, so my Lambda started, I don't know, download some movies maybe, and then do something. This is not effective, right? So what we can do more, just understand how many invocations suffer with these things which we don't understand, is enhanced monitoring and CloudWatch Lambda Insights. When we tick this, we have this information. And here we have the initial duration, right? And we know how long, at least, it took. This called start. Then we can enable tracing on API gateway. So here, and also I recommend to add your own logs there. So you enable the logging, you put the logs, and to become even higher than just lead, you just click this JSON button here and you have this. And I added just this one, so trace ID. So just to have this trace ID through the API, right? Of course, we remember that tracing is needed. And we have something like that. So this is the log from API. So the simple request in the API is more rich than it was in Lambda even, right, before. So nice. And we can even do some different, dashboards for ourselves to see different things from API on the level of the API, what is quite important, right? But what we've done is only for the externals. What about the internal, right? We don't know how our code really behave. So for this, we will use something what is called Lambda Power Tools, right? Anyone use this? All right, so this is the open source project from AWS. It is, let's say, almost OpenTelemetry, but in AWS environment. We have many ways of implementing this. We can have it for Python, TypeScript, .NET recently, and Java. Generally, this allows us to build observability from the box, really. And the best use, especially for Python, is to use Lambda layer, right? You don't need to put into your code. You just add the layer on the Lambda level, right? And finally, we can start implementing this. So after we implement this, you know what? I will just jump through this, and I will show this to you in the real example. And on the end, our template looks like this. It's 67 lines. But we have full observability implemented here, right? So if you want to play with that, here is the link to the repository. I believe this still works. And what we will do now, we will take a look into the, you know what? Let me just do this way a little bit different. Go away. Here I will change the screens for a second, okay? And I will jump into my console. This will give me the better perspective, okay. So I have my Lambda function, right? Here, this is the Lambda which I use, right? I have, what happened here? Okay. This. Okay, now it will work. Right, so I have my Lambda function here somewhere. No, this is not this one. So let me just come back to the Lambda functions. Okay. I have too many of them. Oh yeah, there is a second page. That's true. Yeah. It was hidden. Right, so we have configuration and monitoring and operation tools. And as you can see, I have logs, active tracing, and enhanced monitoring enabled, right? So this gives me the possibility to observe my function. And now let me go to API, and we will do the experiment. Right, so API. This time I have only one page, so this will be simple. Right, so if I go to stages, to production, for example, log tracing, you see there is exactly the same stuff I showed you before. And here we have beautiful link, so let's click it. This function is very complicated. I mean, very complicated. That's my, top programming skills was involved here. Let me show you how to implement this in code. So, or no, before I will show you how it looks in the real life in Lambda function. Okay, second page. Right, so here we have the monitoring tab, right? So I will go to CloudWatch. I can close this. And here I have a lot of things. right? And this is the last log. As you remember the picture with these 3 lines, right? And that was it. So here you can see a lot more, right? I executed this only once. This is one execution. Because you need to remember about the logs from Lambda function, that there will be multiple, let's call it files, but every single file is like connected to one Lambda server behind. So if you hit the same Lambda function, it will be visible in the same log, right? So this is only one log which gives me a lot of information, right? And I even see here that you can see simple that I experienced cold start, right? And I have a lot of information implemented here. You can go even deeper if you want, right? So this is logs. For traces, we have X-ray. Let's see if X-ray already have the information. The problem with X-ray is that X-ray shows information with the delay. So let's go with the service map. Yes, we have it. So what I've done, as I said, simple Lambda function through the API gateway, context of the Lambda was prepared, then Lambda function was executed, right? And I can go to each of those elements to see all information, right? So I have everything here. I can have response distribution. I click this only once, so it doesn't give me much, right? But there is many things. I can go to traces. I hope there will be some. Yes, there are, right? So you see that my function was executed for this period of time. When I go inside, I have the full trace, right? I have the full information, how long each part took place. So if my Lambda function is executing for the longer time than I expected, I can see exactly where, right? And if you have more complicated scenario, for example, you do the query to database, you can see this as well here, that the query was longer than you expect. So you at least know where to start looking, right? And how hard is the implementation? The same, let's say, level of, how to say that? The same level of complication like I showed you with Chekhov. So let's go to the code of this function. It will be this one, I think. So my Lambda function, as I said, this is the highest level of my programming skills. Contains a couple of functions which I've done on purpose, right? So this is my Lambda, and what I have to do is, first of all, import these 3 elements. Is this enough? The letters are big enough? No, good. Let's make it bigger. All right, better? So I have the library AWS Lambda Power Tools, which I imported as a Lambda layer, right? And I import tracer, I import metrics, and I import logging, right? I do some definitions, and please remember one thing, because this part here is not part of any function inside. Like here, like everything what we have in Python after def, right? It means that this thing will be executed only once during the cold start. This is what I call, let's say, user cold start. It's not related to AWS to prepare your infrastructure. It is related to your code, what this code needs to do in order to be operational, right? Like importing, etc., 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 etc. That's why it's important if you have some sensitive information in when you do the clear of the cache in this part. Just think again, because it will be done only once, right? And you want to clear this cache every single time when anything hit this exact Lambda, right? And so I have this, And then, in order to have all of that, I need to have these three decorators. Metric logs, tracer, capture lambda handler, and logger inject lambda context. That's it. 3 lines to start having observability. Okay, 9 lines with the import stuff, right? I added here some additional stuff like capturing the cold start. And here, this is important. Please remember, don't do that on the production, because this collects all information. So it will collect everything what is in request, right? So if you pass in the request some API keys, etc., it will be there. And what is the power here? You can add your own metrics, your own dimensions, your own stuff to that, and this is quite powerful, right? So having that gives you the huge possibility to work with this functionality. Power tools are available on AWS to download, so it's really easy. And where you can go with that? Everywhere, really. So starting with CloudWatch, because this is Power Tools. Generally, it works with CloudWatch, right? We can put logs into S3 and let's say, analyze it with Athena. We can do many other things, which I don't have time to go through. And on the end, we can act on it, right? Self-healing infrastructure, another buzzwords, right? What kind of tools we have for the instrumentation? Power tools, as I said. Jaeger, for example, it has its own libraries, Prometheus, generally everything what is related with OpenTelemetry, right? For the visualization, Grafana, well known, right? Prometheus has its own way to show data. Let's say for the databases, we have NoSQL databases mainly for logs, right? Elasticsearch, for example. But for metrics, I propose you to take a look on the time series databases, which are created exactly for this kind of usage, right? And we have also kind of tools all in one, let's say, right? So we have Prometheus, which can do everything of this, of all those parts. Jaeger, Honeycomb, very nice, really nice tool, right? Dynatrace, and Splunk even recently started to do something like that. And the last thing, please remember, in this whole monitoring stuff, who is monitoring a monitoring server? Right? This is quite important question asked by DevOps Borat a long time ago. Right? So if you have questions, I'll be happy to talk about them. And if you want to stay in touch, this is brand new, started yesterday. So, yep. Thank you very much.